Hello! So thus far, I've been showing you how to do descriptive analytics and a variety of problems that can arise from it. I want to conclude by teaching you just some very basic level diagnostic analysis. To put it simply, diagnostic analytics is the process of figuring out why something happened. Usually, we start by focusing on anomalies or breaks in patterns that we have discovered, and from there, we try to investigate and find out why it happened. It's like CSI but on Excel, right? So often, the answer to that why cannot be found in the given data set itself. We have to do a bit of detective work to investigate further, and this often involves finding patterns outside the given data set. So let's start with a simple example. Now imagine you're the manager of Lying Bee's food delivery service. In the past month, you noticed that the overall ratings of your service has dropped significantly. You want to investigate and find out what happened. So let's take a look at the next lecture activity spreadsheet. Here, we have a list that contains hundreds of orders made over the past 6 months. We have the transaction number, the date, the rating, and comments. Let's do a bit of descriptive analytics, shall we? We'll do a quick examination using pivot tables. So let's select all the columns and click pivot tables. Let's review the breakdown of the average ratings by month. We can do it like this. Just click and drag. As you can see, the average rating drops as the months go by. Now we can visualize it by plotting a graph. We'll do a simple line graph, right? So we highlight that, and then we'll click Insert Chart, and then we'll select Line Graph. And we can see we have a visual representation of what's going on. The average rating per month has indeed been sliding. Something must have happened. What can we do to find out? Well, let's do a quick look at the data. That might give us some clues about the drop in ratings. So let's run a filter and select all the negative ratings. Shall we? Wow, look at all the comments. The reviewers seem to be very displeased with the delivery drivers they got. Surely it can't be all delivery drivers, right? Maybe there's 1 or 2 or 3 culprits. Well, we don't know, right? So we need more information. Now, our current data set does not tell us the drivers responsible for those poor reviews. So we need to get that information from another data set. So let's do the investigative work. Let's see what other data we have available. Okay, so we got 2 other spreadsheets. The first spreadsheet contains a list of delivery drivers. We have their delivery ID, their name, and the date they started working for the company. This will be useful for us to figure out the name of the culprit. If you look at our main spreadsheet, we can't do a VLOOKUP to retrieve the driver's name. There is no unique identifier in these 2 spreadsheets that will help us link one to the other. So let's look at the other spreadsheet. In this spreadsheet, it seems that we have the data we need, right? We have a list of transactions containing the transaction ID, customer ID, and the delivery driver ID. So this might help us to do the connection. Now, of course, you might be wondering, why is the data split up like this? Why can't everything be stored nicely in a single spreadsheet? What you're experiencing now is just a simulation of what you may typically experience in an office, where you can only pull information from a database in separate spreadsheets like this. So let's begin the detective work, shall we? We have one spreadsheet that contains the missing link, and that's important, right? So here's the plan. We can use the main spreadsheet that has the transaction ID, and then we'll use that to pull the delivery person ID from this other spreadsheet. And with that delivery person ID, we can pull the delivery driver's name. That's how we're going to do it. So let's do that.
I stay up too late, too much work on my plate, too many data sets, how to analyze, spreadsheets everywhere, so disorganized, how to work like that, feeling very stressed, and I keep scrolling up and down on Excel, searching for an answer. I can't tell if I'm doing everything alright. At first I tried to sum, but the answer is wrong. Maybe I should merge. VLOOKUP. Now when I try to sum, the answer is right.
Okay, now our main spreadsheet contains all the information we need. But suppose we have so many to scroll, too many to eyeball, what can we do? Let's apply conditional formatting to highlight records where the reviewer gave less than 3 stars. Now, instead of having to look at every line and find all the poor reviews, I can just look at the colors and try to find big blotches of red on the screen. We can simplify our task by using the filter option, and we can select one driver after the other until we find the one driver responsible for the mass number of bad review cases. Here's a chunk of red. We've got a lot of bad reviews for this guy. Who's this guy? Oh, it's Along. Here's another chunk of red. Again, lots of bad reviews. Who's our driver? Bing. Alright, so we've identified our culprits. We now know that Bing and Along were responsible for the high number of bad reviews. Now you might ask, This is still very tedious. Is there a faster way to do it? Yes! And we can do that with pivot table. Okay, so we can use pivot table, construct a listing with the drivers and the number of bad reviews. And what we can do is this unique function in pivot table called the slicer function. You can find it under the ribbon menu, analyze, and then insert slicer. Now this tool allows us to quickly look at each driver and their respective reviews. It's essentially a filter tool, but one that makes it easier to show and to hide data. One of the things we can do is to keep slicing up the data until we find something interesting. What's interesting is that the bad reviews only started after a certain date. Maybe there was a change in company policy that made them upset with work. Maybe. So what we have found gives us leads to follow up for further investigation. So this is what diagnostic analysis allows us to do, right? Give us leads to investigate things further. Thus far, I've covered step 0, data analysis, and step 1, how to define a problem. In the next lecture, I'll teach you how to proceed to step 2, how to model the problem. I'll see you in the next lecture.
Spreadsheets everywhere, so disorganized. How to work like that? Feeling very stressed, and I keep scrolling up and down on Excel, searching for an answer. I can't tell if I'm doing everything alright. At first I tried to sum, but the answer is wrong. Maybe I should merge. VLOOKUP. Now when I try to sum, the answer is right. I'm so glad I merge. VLOOKUP.